Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Stephanie's Larolin. I'm currently filming this right after I just filmed the book newbie tag, so if it's still a chaotic mess, that is why. Anyways, so this video is going to be all the books I've read so far in 2021. Obviously we are 5 months through the year already, so I was gonna do like a wrap up each month, and I might in the future, but for right now I just wanted to tell you all about all the books I've read this year so far. And also sorry if I keep looking away from the camera, I'm still really awkward and I can't look at it. Okay, so in total I have read 34 books so far this year. A lot of those have been rereads, and also a couple of them were fan fictions. So I'm not going to mention the fan fictions, but 5 books off my list were fan fiction. I also don't have physical copies of every single book I've read because I do read a lot on my iPad, but I'm going to go through you cannot see, but there's a bunch of books underneath me right now. Go through the physical copies I've read first, and then go through the books I've read on my iPad. They're going to be in no particular order because 1, I can't for the life of me remember what order I read them in, and 2, Goodreads just loves to mix everything around and all of my books are in the wrong order. Let's start with the book that I just finished last night. So this is Messenger of Fear by Michael Grant. I read this isn't actually my own book, it's one of my friends. I only started it yesterday at I think it was 9 o'clock, and I finished it at 11, so it was a really quick read and I read it in one sitting. I was just reading it before bed. I'm going to be talking about the books and my opinions on them, and hopefully give a little brief description of what they were, and then also give you my star rating. Most of the time, I don't know, my star ratings are kind of all over the place a little, and I'm not a very analytical reader. So this book is about this girl who wakes up, and she wakes up on a grass with mist all around her, and she's really confused and she can't remember anything, and she sees this pale boy. He's described as a pale, solemn young man in a black coat with silver skulls for buttons. Her name is Mara, and you go with her on this journey with this boy who is the messenger, and you follow her and the messenger going around and getting justice for the world. Brief synopsis, I don't know if I did any justice, I probably didn't. Also triggers, there's cruelty and violence in it, animal cruelty and very graphic violence. One thing I really loved about this book was the writing. I've never read anything from Michael Grant, but he's the author of the Gone series that a lot of people have read and have loved. I love his writing. It was insanely good. It is so poetical, and it's not flowery, it's very descriptive, and I really like authors who write in an extremely detailed, descriptive way. The writing kind of brought the story to life for me. It made it extremely whimsical and magical and just wonderful. Then plot wise for the story, I did really enjoy the storyline, and the characters were very likable. Plot twist in the end, looking back on it, it was kind of predictable, but during reading it, I did not expect it whatsoever. Really enjoyed this book. I feel like I've been talking about it way too long, but I give it 4 stars. The next book I have to talk about, I will even cry just thinking about it. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book, oh my god. This is a retelling of Achilles and Patroclus. What's it called again? I don't even know the name of the Odysseus? So it's a Greek mythology retelling. It follows the story of Patroclus and Achilles from when they were young boys to when they're adults. It obviously is retelling, so it's not exactly true to the Greek mythology. story. Don't even have words to explain. It's not annotated because I've only read it once, and usually I would annotate my favorite books. Madeline Miller's writing is just insane. It's so magical. It's just beautiful. Like, there's no other way to explain it. It's poetry. I was sobbing when I read this a good few times. I will insert pictures if I can. This book broke my heart, but it was so good. I kind of thought going into it, this is a Greek mythology retelling, so I'm going to find it kind of hard to understand. I don't know anything about Patroclus and Achilles and anything about Greek mythology. Madeline Miller writes it in such a way that it's really easy to comprehend and understand. I was scared that I would be too focused on grasping the story rather than living in the story. Not at all. Like, this was so easy to understand, so amazing and impactful, and oh, it broke my heart into a million pieces. So of course this was 5 stars, one of my favorite books. Another book I read this year, it's another classic from BookTube. So this is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This follows a girl called Nora whose life is just terrible, and on the day she dies at midnight, she enters this magical library, and basically this library is full of books that entail her life. Every single book is a different experience, a different life, essentially. Every single choice she made up until this moment has made her life the way it is. We follow her opening these books and living all these lives that she could have lived. I was expecting it to be absolutely amazing, and when I started off reading it, I really did enjoy it. I annotated a lot, as you can see. There was a lot of really nice quotes. It was intriguing at the start, and then towards, I think, the middle and the end, I was kind of, when can I finish this? But in saying that, it was good. I was impacted by the read. I also gave this book 4 stars. I think it deserved the 4 stars because of just the feeling of the whole thing. I just really liked the vibes in the library and just the magic of the world, and it really made a lot of strong, important points. Trigger warning for this, for suicide and talk about death. This is a reread, but this is one of my favourite series, the Foxhole Court, or the All for the Game series. You can see I've annotated the shit out of them. I read these for the first time last year. I read them on my iPad first, and then I bought myself physical copies because I just needed them. I love them so much, like so much. I can't even express my thoughts and feelings when it comes to these books. But Foxhole Court is the first book, and a series that follows our main character called Neil Jostin, who is a runaway. Basically gets asked by this big shot team. It's a college athlete team. Also, this book is based around a made-up sport called Exy, EXY. It's not a real sport. I didn't even say the author's name. So it's the Foxhole Court, or the All for the Game series by Nora Sakovic. It was originally written in Polish and it was translated to English. So it's a made-up sport. The author describes it as a mix of lacrosse with ice hockey. So it's played on an enclosed type of ice rink, the way ice hockey would be. It's obviously not on ice. You use a racket and a ball. You have like really thick gear because it's a very aggressive and violent game. That's all I can tell you about the sport itself, because I honestly don't know. Neil Jostin gets recruited by this team, and it's basically a team of rejects. It follows Neil's journey with this team. It's just a masterpiece. It's not for everyone, I will say that. I just love all the characters in this series with my entire heart. I swear they're my children. Like, obviously, because it's a team of rejects, there is a whole bunch of triggers for this, so to look up the triggers before you're reading if that's something you would need to know. It is a problematic series in some ways. Like, the portrayal of medication for mental illness isn't great. I feel like every book is problematic in their own way, so I adore these characters and they really mean a lot to me. So the All for the Game series by Nora Sakovic. I love doing this. Another series that I reread, 2 of these series from the same author, they were rereads. One of them wasn't because it's a new book that just came out. This is the Akatar series, as people usually call it. Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. They're kind of heavy, so I'm gonna hold up the first one. This is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, like I said. I read them for the first time again on my iPad. I fell in love with them. I really just adore the characters, but also the world. The world is just a reader's dream. I don't know how to explain it. It's just so magical. This is the first book in the series. It's still an ongoing series. A new book came out this year. There is so far technically 5 books in this series, but one of those is a novella. In the first book we follow our main character called Feyre. She and her family are extremely poor. She goes out hunting for her family to get food. She ends up killing a high fae. Now, high fae is a magical creature who has magic. The abilities can range extremely strong and they are immortal. Feyre ends up killing one of these high fae with the only thing that can kill them, which is ash arrows. She is then taken prisoner by the high fae lord. She is to go live in captivity with this man. It's supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I say that very loosely because it is and it isn't. The first book is, but the rest of the series is totally different to the first book. The first book doesn't really compare to the rest of the books in the series. There's a lot of aspects in the first book that I really did enjoy. It's heavily set on the romance. It is YA technically, but as the books go on, it's new adult. How do I say adult? Adult. Adult? Adult? Girl, I don't know. These are the rest of them. There's A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then a novella, A Court of Frost and Starlight. And then there's also the new one, A Court of Silver Flames. Aside from A Court of Silver Flames, which I only just read, A Court of Mist and Fury I think is my favourite out of these. It's really, really, really good. These were all 5 stars for me. The new book, which is called A Court of Silver Flame. In the other first 4 books, it follows our main character Feyre, and this one is focused on Nesta, who's one of Feyre's sisters. It centers around Nesta's story after a really traumatic thing happens to her. Kind of just centered around her grief and her trauma and how she moves through that. It is very centered on romance too. You would think that because it's centered a lot around romance, the plot would be kind of lacking, but in my opinion it's not. I think the plot is just as big as the romance and it's just as important, which I really like. Sometimes when authors are writing romance, especially fantasy romance, they're all like, ooh, they're in love, but then they forget half their story doesn't make sense. But Sarah J Maas is just, wow, she's so good. This one is definitely not YA. It is an adult romance. I'm going to keep with my theme of Sarah J Maas because I have 3 more books of hers, but they're in the same series. I feel like I've been talking for ages. Like with A Court of Thorns and Roses, I originally read the Throne of Glass series first. And I read those all on my iPad except for the last 2 books, Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash. Oh my god, these books are so heavy. I'm just going to hold up one because you know my arms cannot hold that. This is the 6th book in an 8-part series, YA fantasy series about a young assassin girl called Selena Sardothia. In the first book, she was captured and she's after spending a year in slave labour camp called Endovier. She's approached by the king's son to compete on behalf of the king in a competition to become the king's warrior. And if she competes in this competition and wins, she will be free after she does her service for the king. If she loses, she will either die or get sent back to the camp. So we follow her during that competition. As the books go on, we learn more about her and her character. It gets so good. So this is obviously quite late into the series, so I can't really say much about it because it would be extreme spoilers. When I first read this book, I started sobbing, like I bawled my eyes out. And the second time around, I was just as bad. The twist in this one, so good. I was not expecting it. Yeah, I'm going to generalize all 3 of these books because I don't want to spoil it on anyone. I loved them all. I was a little disappointed by the last book, I won't lie, but all in all this series is like a full 5 stars for me. I adore them. Absolutely adore them, and it's the series that got me into reading properly. The last physical books I have to talk about is, this isn't the full series, but they're in the wrong order. This is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is my all-time favourite series, book series ever. Literally, these books mean so much to me. Like, they are my entire heart. Obviously, I have all the books but the first one here, because I've read the first one now, I think 4 times, and these I've read twice, each of them. I reread The Raven Boys, which is the first book, just at the end of last year, so technically it doesn't fit in with the books I read in 2021. This book series centres around one girl and 4 boys, so it's kind of a gang of teenagers, and they are looking for a Welsh king, basically. And it's a fantasy series. There's a lot of found family in it, and magic, and just all over greatness. You know, I might do like a video in future with my coherent thoughts on this book series, because right now I actually can't articulate my feeling. I'm also planning on rereading this one, The Raven King, the last one, in a video pretty soon, along with Call Down the Hawk, which is the first book in Maggie Stiefvater's new series based off of The Raven Cycle, which is called the Dreamer Trilogy. As the second book in that trilogy comes out next week, I'll be doing vlogs on that. But my favourite in the series would probably have to be The Raven King, just because it comes together and I just adore it so much. And can we just take a minute? Beautiful. Wow. And let's ignore the fact that I got the wrong copy, so it's so mismatched. Clearly you can tell I adore these books. That's it for all the physical books I read. So the first one is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I had really high expectations going into this book, like really high, because everyone on BookTube raves about V.E. Schwab, especially her series, her Vicious series. I'm not even sure what the series is called itself. I know there's 2 books in it, Vicious and Vengeful, but I know her other series, I think it's A Gathering of Shadows is the series name, has big hype, and I'm hoping that I'll like that one better. Vicious basically follows 2 morally grey main characters, and it's centered around these people who are called extraordinaries, so they're superhuman basically. They are enhanced human beings, and Victor, who's one of the main characters, and Eli are both best friends, and they decide they want to become an extraordinary, or an EO as they call it. This book started off really well for me. I was really intrigued, and I loved the writing style. It was really easy to get into and really fast paced, and I really liked the fact that at the very start it was switching point of views, but also was doing flashbacks, so that was an aspect of the story that I really liked. And the end kind of fell a bit flat for me. It didn't really give me what I wanted out of it, and it was quite predictable. I really enjoyed the characters themselves, and I gave this book, I think 4 stars, no 3 stars I gave it. I liked the idea and I liked the characters, but something about it just, I didn't really enjoy it that much, and I'm not going to read the second book. So the book I read was Shadow and Bone, which I read that in preparation for the Shadow and Bone Netflix series. This series is so good. I loved it. You should all go watch it. I've already read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom before, which is a duology from the same author based in the same world, just a different area. And I adore those books. They're so good. Shadow and Bone is a trilogy, and I wanted to read it to be caught up in time for the show. If I'm honest, I didn't like any of the characters. The main character, Alina, really irritated me. She just was not likable, and everything was written in her point of view, so I just couldn't get my head around her. Like, I don't know. The love interests, both of them fell flat again for me. They were both kind of irritating. I just didn't like it. The story follows an orphan called Alina Starkov, who is a map maker. In the world she lives in, there's basically this thing called the Shadow Fold, and it's this big blacked out area, and if you go in there, if you try to travel through it, you probably won't come out. So it's very dangerous. Most people die. It's the things of nightmares and all that. I started the second book, Siege and Storm, but I stopped because I just couldn't get through it. They were 3-star, but it was only, I think I only gave it 3 stars because I was like really rooting for it. I really wanted to like it, but I just didn't. Show, on the other hand, is absolutely magnificent. I loved the show so much. So save yourself, don't read the books, but watch the show. But read Six of Crows, because you don't need to read Shadow and Bone in order to read Six of Crows. They're 5 stars. Oh my god, did I not even say the author of Shadow and Bone? I didn't. Shadow and Bone is written by Lee Bardugo, if I didn't say that. The next 2 books, it's a book and then a little novella to go with it. So it's The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum, then The Legend of the Golden Raven by Kay Ancrum as well. Legend of the Golden Raven is the novella, and it's just written in another character's point of view, but it follows the same story. So you don't have to read it, but I read it because I just adored The Wicker King so much. I loved it. I'm trying to remember now, it was a while ago since I read it, and I don't have it physically. I do want to get it physically so I can annotate it because I just loved it that much. It kind of just follows 2 best friends who are extremely codependent. It tells a story of how they each deal with one of the friends slowly losing mental stability. I don't know, I feel like that's the only way I can kind of say it without spoiling anything, but the reason why I loved it so much is because it was so detailed and descriptive in explaining their relationship and their individual personalities. And I really liked the writing style. It was kind of chaotic and all over the place, which matched the kind of feeling of the story and the feeling of slowly descending into madness. I love that book. I don't really know how else to talk about it, but I adored it. That was, of course, 5 stars for me as well. I just checked and I've been talking for 41 minutes. Next book is These Violent Delights by Micaiah Nemirever. I'm definitely saying that wrong. I read it shortly after I read The Wicker King, and it's quite similar. Well, it's not quite similar, but I don't know, the feel of it is quite similar. Also, The Wicker King, I don't know if I said, it has a lot of triggers. And same with These Violent Delights, it's a very violent, graphic book. One thing I loved about it was the writing style. It was just written so nicely. It kind of shocked me. I rated it 3 stars, but I did enjoy it. Look, thinking back on it now, I did enjoy it, but the reading experience was quite traumatic and heavy to read, and I didn't get what I thought I would from it, but it was a good book. The next one is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I read this because my best friend read it and she absolutely loved it. This is a classic, a modern classic, I guess you would call it. I gave this book 3 stars. I loved the writing style was beautiful. James Baldwin just writes so poetically. This book follows a guy called David, and he's engaged to a woman. He goes to Paris, and it's kind of like a break in between their engagement, and meets this guy called Giovanni and has an affair with him. Yeah, it's kind of more so about David's own story and his own experience. It was good, everything, but I feel like I didn't take as much from it as other people would, and I just didn't really understand it enough to get everything out of it. I think everyone should read it because it depends what you take from it. It's like one of those books, but I did enjoy the writing style of it. The last book I have to talk about is Rhapsodic, is that how you say it? It's from Laura Palasla, romance book. This 4 stars because I did really like it at the start, and it was really exciting and I really wanted to keep reading to figure out what's going to happen next. I loved the relationship, but in the end I just felt like it didn't really give me what I wanted from it. I don't know how to explain it other than that. But it basically follows this girl who... It's in this world where magic exists, but it's more of a kind of modern realism type of magic. So our main character ends up doing this really bad thing, and she has to call this man called the Bargainer, who is known to help and clean up your messes, but you are in debt to him. And basically she's after racking up a whole arm of beads, because you get a bead to signify the bargain you have made with the Bargainer. So, and yeah, it kind of just follows her when one day, after all these years after her making these bargains with the Bargainer, he leaves, and 10 years later, I'm pretty sure, he comes back and he wants to call in all his debts. So yeah, it was interesting. I liked the magic and the world, and the interactions and banter was like fun and great, and the romance was nice. But I don't know, there was just something about it that didn't really grab my attention, you know? So, but I did enjoy it, and if you like a nice romance, a steamy, fun romance, fantasy romance, definitely read it. It was a fun time. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know when I'll upload next, but I will. Sometime. Like and subscribe and all that. Yeah, thanks for watching, I guess.